My life wasn't just a mess, it was a betrayal. For 3 years, my brain felt like static, a constant electrical hum that sabotaged my ambition. I was an aspiring doctor, yet my body was failing me in ways no textbook could explain. The relentless exhaustion, the splitting headaches that stole entire weeks, the crippling inability to focus when I needed it most. My father, Arthur Hayes, and my stepmother, Clarissa, had the same convenient answer for all of it: stress. They said it with such polished, easy certainty, their voices dripping with concern, that for a long time, I actually believed them. My father would talk about the $5 million trust fund established by my late grandparents, the one that matured on my 25th birthday, just 6 months away. He'd remind me how the pressure of that wealth, combined with the rigor of medical school, was simply too much for my sensitive nature. My stepmother, a picture of flawless wellness and the CEO of a boutique supplement company, would gently scold me for not meditating enough. They said it was stress. They lied. The real poison wasn't in my mind. It was a slow, calculated chemical attack, and the delivery system was ingeniously simple. My own bedroom, fed by the silent, hidden labyrinth of the house's HVAC system. The truth wasn't in my head. It was in the air I breathed. My family wasn't just neglecting me. They were actively plotting to use my medical school failures and my deteriorating health as the execution fee for their multi-million-dollar motive. The only reason I'm alive to tell this story is because one day, a blue-collar attic worker found the truth where they least expected it. I grew up in the Gilded Cage, a sprawling estate nestled in the canyons of Beverly Hills, California. It was less of a home and more of a financial fortress, designed to project an image of impeccable, untouchable success. After my mother passed away when I was young, Arthur, a corporate finance lawyer who defined his life by billable hours and asset columns, swiftly married Clarissa. She was stunning, blonde, and possessed a glacial composure that matched the white marble floors. Clarissa, with her vast network of celebrity clients and her focus on clean living, transformed the house into a temple of perfection. She micromanaged every aspect of our lives, from the gluten-free dinners to the precise timing of my father's afternoon golf game. And in her perfect narrative, I was the sole flaw, the inconvenient truth left over from a previous life. My symptoms always worsened dramatically within hours of returning home from the university dorm. It was the same cycle: a quick dinner, a polite conversation about my fragile health, a retreat to my beautifully appointed but strangely cold bedroom. Then the slow, agonizing decline would begin. The deep, restorative sleep I craved would become a fitful, shallow oblivion. I'd wake up feeling not rested, but profoundly drained, as if someone had plugged an internal wire into an empty socket and sucked all the energy out. The doctors, paid handsomely by Arthur's insurance, always circled back to the same diagnosis. "You're healthy, Mr. Hayes. Just severe psychosomatic anxiety. Take a break." But my gut, the last remnant of my logical medical mind, screamed that something was rotten in the state of Denmark. How could stress cause that faint, metallic, almost chemical tang I sometimes tasted in the air when I first entered my bedroom? A scent that vanished quickly, replaced by Clarissa's expensive lavender oil diffusers. It all traced back to that $5 million. The terms of the trust were simple but brutal. I needed to be demonstrably competent and progressing in my chosen field by my 25th birthday. If I failed to meet the trustees' requirements, specifically due to documented evidence of mental incompetence or chronic, debilitating illness, the funds would revert to my legal guardian, my father, Arthur Hayes, for responsible financial management. My failure was their windfall, and they were actively creating that failure, symptom by excruciating symptom. The Gilded Cage was more than just a home. It was a theater of control, and Clarissa was its star conductor. Her control was subtle, suffocating. She didn't yell or issue harsh commands. She used language and money, or the subtle withholding of it, to keep me precisely where she wanted me, dependent, isolated, and doubting my own sanity. Every interaction was a masterclass in gaslighting. If I mentioned feeling dizzy, she'd tilt her head, her perfect blonde hair catching the light of the precisely curated chandelier, and purr. "Oh, Ronan, are we still letting the old school stress get to us? You simply must stop reading those morbid textbooks. All that negativity is why you're feeling so weak." She always framed my deteriorating physical health as a moral or mental failing, never a medical one. Arthur, my father, was completely complicit, or perhaps willingly ignorant. His world revolved around asset liquidation and financial prestige. As long as Clarissa maintained the illusion of the perfect high society family, and as long as I was struggling just enough to seem incompetent, he didn't care about the details. He had effectively outsourced the messy job of being a parent to his trophy wife. "It looks bad, Ronan." He'd lecture me during our strained weekly calls, his voice cold and flat. "You need to show stability. We can't have the trustee thinking you're too unstable to manage that kind of capital. Maybe take a break from medical school. Work for me? Just until you're 25th, for stability's sake." His suggestion was a perfectly manicured velvet cage, designed to trap me inside his orbit until the deadline passed and the money automatically reverted to his control. The symptoms, however, became undeniable, and they were distinctly linked to the house. The exhaustion was worst when I was sleeping there. And then, there was the smell. It was a faint, almost subliminal odor in my room. A mix of Clarissa's expensive diffusers and something else. Something acrid and faint, like old copper or diluted cleaning fluid. It was the scent of the crime in progress. Clarissa, noticing my growing suspicion, leaned even harder into her wellness guru persona. This was the focus of the wellness guru's prescription. She insisted on personally overseeing my health regime. "Darling, I've blended a new, rare herbal supplement," she announced one night, placing a smooth obsidian pill box on my bedside table. "It's specially formulated to support cognitive function and ease anxiety. You must take 2 before bed. It's from a very exclusive farm." The pills were inert. I knew that. But the act itself was unnerving. She would watch me take them, her sharp, calculating eyes fixed on my face, waiting for a reaction. I felt like a rat in a lab, being observed after consuming a controlled, but as of yet, unknown substance. I'd force a smile, say thank you, and swallow the tasteless capsules. But my stomach would churn with dread. It was in this period that I started doing my own research. As a medical student, I understood toxicology. I knew that low-dose, protracted exposure to certain neurotoxins could mimic the exact profile of my symptoms: chronic fatigue, cognitive fog, and debilitating headaches. These were the hallmarks of psychosomatic illness, but also the hallmarks of slow, calculated poisoning. The goal wasn't a sudden death. It was a slow, documented decline into official mental incompetence that would allow Arthur to legally seize the trust fund. The most chilling sign of their intent was the HVAC system itself. My room's air felt heavy, and the vents, instead of cycling air, seemed to push a strange, almost undetectable warmth, regardless of the thermostat setting. I had always dismissed the faint chemical tang as a byproduct of the expensive, over-engineered system in the house. But the more Clarissa insisted it was just stress, the more my suspicion shifted to the air I breathed. The tension was immense. I was spending weeks fighting for my sanity, constantly battling the debilitating fatigue and the invisible chemical pressure. I couldn't share my fears with anyone. How do you tell a friend, a professor, or a doctor that your sophisticated, well-regarded stepmother is poisoning you through your air conditioning system? It sounded like textbook paranoia, further cementing the unstable Ronan narrative they were so meticulously building. The only way out was to stabilize my health, pass my exams, and claim the trust fund before the clock hit my 25th birthday. The irony was, in order to escape the poison, I first had to find the source, and that source was currently hidden somewhere above the ceiling, in the dusty, forbidden attic. The invisible clock was winding down fast. I had less than 3 months until my 25th birthday, and with it, the critical deadline for the trust fund. My academic performance, plagued by the constant cognitive fog, was slipping. I was missing study sessions, forgetting key medical terminology, and spending entire days staring blankly at my laptop. If I failed this next major exam, Arthur would have the undeniable, documented proof of my temporary incompetence he needed to petition the trustee to take over the $5 million. I had to clear my head, and I needed to do it without relying on the medical establishment that was convinced I was merely anxious. My solution was not medical, but architectural. I decided to address the structural problem I suspected in my room. The most valuable thing I had left was my medical education, and my mind was my last weapon. I knew the symptoms pointed to a protracted exposure in a controlled environment. The only logical focal point was my bedroom and, specifically, the HVAC system that cycled air into it. I needed an expert, someone who specialized in the dusty, hidden infrastructure of the house, not someone who carried a stethoscope. The problem was getting anyone into the house without raising Clarissa's alarm. In a strange twist of fate, Arthur gave me the perfect cover. He had decided to put the Beverly Hills estate on the market, a move that likely had more to do with liquidating assets than downsizing. He called me into his study, the room smelling of old leather and new money. "Ronan," he stated, not looking up from his legal pads. "The house is being listed next week. We need to present a flawless profile. I'm having a full check of the climate control systems done. The buyer's inspection process is brutal, and any issues with the air quality or the HVAC are instant deal breakers." He handed me a contact card. "A contractor named Mitch Wallace will be here Thursday morning. He specializes in air duct remediation and attic insulation. I need you here to ensure he accesses all the upstairs units, including yours. Tell him it's a priority. He's a union guy. No nonsense. Just get him in and out." The plan was handed to me on a silver platter. Arthur was so fixated on his financial image and the impending sale that he inadvertently supplied me with the exact, unbiased witness I desperately needed. This was my moment to bypass Clarissa's surveillance. Thursday morning arrived, and with it came Mitch Wallace. He wasn't the slick, suit-and-tie contractor I expected. Mitch was a solid, middle-aged man wearing a faded union shirt, his arms corded and dusted with insulation fibers. He carried a heavy-duty toolbox like a shield against the pretentious wealth of the house. He represented pure, unclouded reality stepping into my staged illusion. "Ronan Hayes, your dad says you have a priority vent upstairs," Mitch said, his voice a low rumble, instantly cutting through the oppressive quiet of the marble foyer. "Yes, Mitch. It's my room," I confirmed, walking him past the kitchen, my heart pounding in my chest. "Clarissa, my stepmother is obsessive about air quality. She keeps saying the house has a damp smell and wants the upstairs checked thoroughly." I used Clarissa's own paranoia as cover. Mitch nodded, his eyes professionally scanning the hallway ceiling. "Expensive house, kid. But sometimes the fanciest houses have the worst ventilation. Too much insulation, not enough breathing room." He pulled a sturdy ladder from his truck, his movements efficient and quiet. We went straight to my room. Mitch placed the ladder against the wall near the ceiling vent and climbed up, his flashlight beam slicing into the dust-filled cavity above. "The air in here does feel heavy," Mitch muttered from above. "The flow is off. I need to get into the main duct line in the attic. That's where the filter unit for this wing ties in." I looked at the simple, white return vent, now perfectly framed by the glow of Mitch's flashlight. It looked innocuous, yet I was certain it was the silent delivery point of my torment. Mitch descended and started packing his gear for the attic. "You wait here, kid. That attic is full of old junk, dust, and maybe a few angry squirrels. I'll be quick. Just need to check the main line connections. I stood alone in the hallway, listening to Mitch's heavy boots ascending the narrow staircase to the upper reaches of the house. I was about to entrust my life, my sanity, and my $5 million inheritance to a man I'd only known for 5 minutes. But his eyes were clear, and his focus was on tangible things, wires, ducts, and airflow, not on my father's bank account or Clarissa's wellness narrative. The truth was hidden in the rafters, and Mitch Wallace was the only key. I stood in the hallway, straining to hear any sound from the labyrinthine attic above. The house was silent. A vast, echoing tomb of expensive wood and cold marble. The seconds stretched into minutes. What if Mitch found nothing? What if the chemical tang was truly a psychosomatic delusion, and all my desperate conviction was just proof of the instability Arthur and Clarissa were hoping for, just as doubt began to creep in? I heard a sharp, muffled sound from above, not the expected thud of an old water heater, but a distinct metallic click, followed by a low, shocked exclamation that was instantly cut short. Then, silence. Mitch had stopped moving entirely. "Mitch? Everything okay up there?" I called up the attic stairs, my voice barely a whisper. A few tense moments later, Mitch's head appeared in the opening, dusted with insulation fibers and sweat. His face was pale, his eyes wide and stripped of their professional skepticism. He looked like a man who had seen something profoundly wrong, something that didn't belong in a simple air duct check. "Kid," he said, his voice raw, kept deliberately low. "You need to come up here, quietly. Bring your phone, flashlight on, and don't touch anything." My heart hammered against my ribs with a cold, terrifying certainty. This wasn't a broken pipe or a leaky roof. This was it. I climbed the narrow wooden stairs, the air immediately turning thick and stale, carrying that faint, acrid smell I knew too well, now stronger, more concentrated. The attic was a cavernous, unfinished space, a spiderweb of wooden trusses, dusty insulation, and tangled copper wiring. Mitch was standing near the main junction of the HVAC ductwork, which snaked into the wall leading directly to my bedroom vent. He pointed his heavy-duty work light at a section of the main duct line. "See that?" Mitch whispered, shining the beam on a spot just above the large metal duct, hidden beneath a thick layer of strategically placed fiberglass insulation. Mitch had exposed a clean, deliberate alteration. It wasn't a repair job. It was an installation. Tucked tightly against the cold metal, barely visible, was a small, sophisticated piece of equipment, a customized mini-chemical dispersion unit. It was compact, silent, and attached to a tiny glass reservoir. "That's not factory standard," Mitch stated firmly, his union loyalty ensuring his testimony would be solid. "That's a specialty item. Looks like it's rigged to the heating cycle. It would pulse a chemical out whenever the air kicks on. Low dose. You'd never smell it unless the system was static." I felt the blood drain from my face, a wave of nausea replacing the familiar headache. My father's house, this beacon of perfection, was a gas chamber. The air I breathed, the very substance sustaining my life, had been carefully poisoned every time I returned home. Clarissa's anxiety diagnosis, Arthur's constant needling about my mental competence. It was all a brilliant, twisted cover story for this insidious little machine. Mitch, sensing my shock, carefully put on a pair of plastic gloves and gently pried open the reservoir on the dispersion unit. It was nearly empty, containing only a residue of fine, white powder. "And this," Mitch continued, his voice grave, "this isn't dust. I work with mold and pest control chemicals every day. This is crystalline, high grade. It's designed to aerosolize. I'll bet my life this is what's been making you sick." He took a series of meticulous, high-resolution photos with his rugged cell phone, shots of the unit, the serial numbers, the rigged wiring, and a close-up of the powder residue in the reservoir. Every click of the camera was a blow against the illusion they had built. The simple, honest reality captured by a working man's camera had just exposed the complex, cold-blooded plot of two wealthy predators. "We need to get out of here," Mitch said, his eyes scanning the quiet attic, looking less at the wires and more for a hidden camera or a third party. "I'm bagging a sample for the police. You need to call someone you trust, and you need to do it now, before they realize I found the hidden mechanism." The fear was replaced by a pure, white-hot, righteous fury. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't fragile. I was the target of a premeditated murder plot. I gripped my phone, my hand finally steady. The time for whispering was over. Mitch quickly sealed the small bag containing the white crystalline residue and carefully placed the fiberglass insulation back over the dispersion unit, leaving no obvious trace of our intrusion. We scrambled down from the attic, the silence of the empty house now feeling malignant. "I've already confirmed the chemical profile in my head, Ronan," Mitch whispered, his voice intense. "It's likely a synthetic neurotoxin designed for slow, cumulative effects. Low exposure won't kill you fast, but it will mimic the symptoms of severe mental fatigue and neurological distress. Perfect for their narrative." His words hit me harder than any of Clarissa's gaslighting. 3 years of my life, my struggles in medical school, the missed opportunities, the constant self-doubt, had been orchestrated by a silent machine in my own ceiling. "I need more than a sample, Mitch," I said, my voice cold and flat. "I need their motive, their plan, written down. This is Clarissa's work. She wouldn't leave loose ends." "Where would she hide a smoking gun?" Mitch asked, his eyes scanning the impeccable hallway. "Not in a safe," I reasoned, the clarity finally returning to my medic-trained mind. "She's a wellness guru. She'd hide it where she hides her knowledge. Her home office?" Clarissa's home office was a sanctuary of faux wellness. Shelves of expensive, unread books on holistic healing, a pristine leather desk, and an aura of undisturbed perfection. The door was usually locked, but Clarissa, in her arrogance, relied on the house's general security system, which I knew Arthur usually deactivated when he was away on business. I used a paperclip and the basic lock-picking skills I'd learned in my teenage years. The tumbler clicked. I slipped inside, Mitch guarding the hallway door. The room smelled faintly of sage and expensive hand lotion. My target wasn't the computer. It was the pristine, leather-bound journal Clarissa used to track her diet and supplement regimes, the book she kept visible, to maintain her holistic image. I found it immediately, tucked into a leather portfolio. My fingers shook slightly as I opened it. It wasn't a diary. It was a clinical tracking chart. My name, Ronan Hayes, was written at the top of a page dated 3 years ago. The page was split into meticulously ruled sections, written in Clarissa's elegant, unmistakable script, detailing my systematic decline. One entry from early in the plot noted the HVAC cycle initial method with a dosage of 100 micrograms neurotoxin, and the reaction was mild headache, difficulty concentrating, with the desired outcome listed as confirmed anxiety stress. Later, an entry detailed the use of a supplement, placebo, with a dosage of 0 micrograms, and the note read, "Subject remains suspicious. Increase air dosage." Clearly intending to maintain my belief in drug-induced health issues while escalating the real, airborne poison. The most recent tracking entry was chilling. HVAC, augmented dosage of 300 micrograms, resulting in severe cognitive fog, sleep disruption, failure to complete medical assignments. The ultimate goal was written in the desired outcome section. Incompetence threshold approaching. Target date, November 15, 25th B-Day. The chart was my life story, distilled into a weaponized spreadsheet. The special herb in her bisque, the rare supplement in the pill box, all decoys. The real dosage, the slow, calculated decline, was delivered via the air. The chemical residue Mitch found was the precise neurotoxin Clarissa had been administering, all aimed at manufacturing my incompetence before the November 15th deadline. The rage was overwhelming, but it brought with it absolute clarity. I wasn't just sick, I was being engineered to fail by the two people who were supposed to protect me. The shame, the self-doubt, the anxiety, it all burned away, replaced by a pure, icy determination to secure justice. "Mitch," I said, my voice barely audible, holding up the damning journal. "This is everything. The confession, the method, and the timeline." I systematically photographed every page, every meticulous entry detailing my cognitive decline and the escalating dosages. The flash of my phone camera was like a rapid-fire legal filing. This was no longer suspicion. This was premeditated assault. "I'm calling the police now," I said. "We don't mention the chart or the air ducts yet. We report a discovery of illegal, dangerous chemical substances in the HVAC system with potential criminal intent. We bring in the forensics team first." Mitch nodded, his eyes fixed on the door. "Good. We need the evidence secured by a professional, not a panicked college kid. I'm your witness. Ronan, you're not alone." I walked back into the hallway, leaving the gilded cage of Clarissa's office behind. I dialed 911, my voice steady, precise, and professional. I was a victim no longer. I was the key witness, armed with the evidence of a slow-motion murder plot driven by $5 million and a terrifyingly flawless script. The police response was immediate and professional. Within minutes, an unmarked black sedan and a patrol car pulled up to the curb of the Beverly Hills estate. The man in charge, Detective Diaz, was sharp-eyed and serious, a stark contrast to the casual dismissal I had received from previous doctors. I presented him with my evidence precisely, sticking to the facts. The discovery of a non-standard rigged chemical dispersion unit in the main HVAC ductwork, confirmed by my witness, Mitch Wallace, the union contractor. I made sure to emphasize the potential for a synthetic neurotoxin to be aerosolized, creating a severe health hazard. Detective Diaz took one look at Mitch, covered in attic dust and holding the evidence bag, and then at the pristine, expensive facade of the Hayes residence. The contrast spoke volumes. "Mr. Hayes, we're retrieving forensic samples now," the detective said, his voice clipped and efficient. "The unit will be dismantled and tested. Mr. Wallace's testimony and the physical evidence are substantial. We need to maintain the scene until we can question the residents about this apparatus." He immediately sealed the attic access and the main HVAC control panel with yellow police tape. The gilded cage, designed to hide all imperfections, was now officially a crime scene. I was sitting in the immaculate white foyer with Mitch when the low rumble of Arthur Hayes' black armored SUV turned onto the street. They were back much sooner than I had anticipated. Arthur slammed on the brakes, the tires squealing slightly on the paved driveway. He burst out of the car, his face turning a mottled red as he spotted the patrol car and the bright yellow tape running across his perfect hallway. "What in God's name is the meaning of this? Ronan?" he roared, his polished demeanor shattering instantly. "You broke into my house and called the police over an air filter? I told you to get that anxiety under control." Clarissa emerged from the passenger side. Her initial confusion quickly evaporated the moment she saw me standing next to the dust-covered Mitch Wallace. Her perfect, hostess smile didn't just drop, it was annihilated, replaced by a look of pure, glacial fury. She knew Mitch hadn't found dust. He had found the truth. She immediately walked past Arthur, recovering her composure with frightening speed, slipping back into her wellness guru facade. "Detective?" Clarissa purred, her voice saccharine, yet carrying an undertone of steel. "There must be a misunderstanding. This is a family matter. My stepson is under immense stress due to his medical school exams and the upcoming trust fund deadline. He's been prone to flights of imagination lately. This contractor must have misplaced his tools." "Flights of imagination. Clarissa?" I cut in, stepping forward. The pure, icy anger gave me the strength to stand up to the woman who had spent 3 years trying to dismantle my mind. "You weren't protecting me from bad air. You were poisoning me. Show them the pictures. Detective Diaz, unmoved by Clarissa's wealth and prestige, held up his phone. He displayed the high-resolution photograph Mitch had taken of the mini chemical dispersion unit taped inside the air duct. Clarissa's composure finally wavered for a terrifying millisecond, but she quickly forced a dry, disbelieving laugh. "Oh, that old thing. It's a therapeutic essential oil diffuser I installed to help Ronan's anxiety. A home remedy. It's perfectly legal." "A home remedy rigged to the main heating line and hidden under insulation?" Mitch Wallace interjected, his voice firm and unwavering. "Ma'am, I'm a union contractor with 30 years of experience. That was a sophisticated, custom installation, not a retail diffuser." The evidence was too strong. I pushed the advantage further, moving to the core of the motive. "It wasn't a diffuser, Clarissa. It was a chemical delivery system. I saw the journal," I stated, my voice cutting through the tension. "You were tracking the dosage and my cognitive decline. You were trying to manufacture my mental incompetence to seize the $5 million trust fund before my 25th birthday." Arthur, who had been toggling his fury between the police and me, finally stared at Clarissa, his face confused, then twisting into a primal rage aimed squarely at his wife. "The journal? What is he talking about? Clarissa?" Arthur snapped, his financial mind finally grasping the legal liability. "We agreed to let him fail naturally. You didn't tell me about any poisoning? It's a distraction." "Arthur!" Clarissa hissed back, losing her perfect control entirely. "He's trying to ruin our reputation ahead of the house sale because he's jealous." The chaos was complete. Detective Diaz stepped between them, his hand resting on his sidearm. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, we found evidence suggesting premeditated intent to harm. Forensic teams are confirming the chemical agent now. We are taking both of you in for questioning." Arthur immediately tried to use his wealth as a shield, citing his lawyers, his political connections, and his prestige. But Diaz was unmoved. As two uniformed officers gently cuffed Clarissa, she locked eyes with me. There was no apology, no remorse, only a look of pure, distilled hatred, as if I were the villain who had ruined her perfect script. I had not just found the physical evidence of my torment. I had found the profound, terrifying truth that $5 million was the only reason my family kept me alive, just long enough for them to kill me slowly. The aftermath of the confrontation was a deafening silence that settled over the Hayes residence, broken only by the distant sounds of the forensic team working in the attic and the quiet retreat of the patrol cars. Arthur and Clarissa were gone, taken in for processing. I stood in the foyer, Mitch Wallace beside me, watching the last vestiges of the perfect illusion crumble. I felt an immense sense of psychological relief, replacing the crippling chronic anxiety that had dominated my life. I was not crazy. I was merely a target. The final essential piece of the betrayal was delivered the next day by Mr. Davenport, the family's managing attorney, a weary man with kind eyes who had served my grandparents for decades. We met in his downtown Los Angeles office, far away from the toxic perfection of Beverly Hills. "Ronan, Mr." Davenport said, his voice grave as he laid a thick legal document on his polished mahogany desk. "You need to understand the full context of your inheritance. Your grandparents established this trust for you 30 years ago. It's sizable, approximately $5 million. I felt the air rush out of my lungs, but the number wasn't a shock, it was the confirmation. The neurotoxin, the gaslighting, the manufactured failure, it all snapped into brutal, crystal-clear focus. "They knew about the terms, didn't they?" I whispered, my voice rough. "Arthur and Clarissa knew this since I was a child." "Yes," Mr. Davenport confirmed gently. "The terms were explicit. The principal would be fully accessible to you on your 25th birthday, which is in 2 months. However, the clause they were weaponizing stated that if you were deemed mentally incompetent or suffered from a chronic, debilitating condition that rendered you incapable of managing your assets before that date, The principal would revert to your current legal guardian for responsible administration. That guardian was Arthur Hayes. It wasn't just Clarissa. Arthur, the man who preached integrity and financial success, was complicit in a scheme to slowly dismantle his own son's mind for $5 million. He had traded my life and my future for financial gain, using his own son's psychological degradation as his ticket to wealth. The betrayal was a deep, physical wound. But the realization that I was right, that I was worth fighting for, was the first step toward genuine recovery. The physical symptoms, the headaches, and the cognitive fog began to recede almost immediately, replaced by a searing clarity of purpose. The ensuing weeks were a blur of depositions and forensic reports. Mitch Wallace's testimony was the anchor. He was an unbiased, professional witness who presented the physical evidence, the rigged mini-chemical dispersion unit, and the analysis of the white residue, which was confirmed to be a potent, slow-acting neurotoxin, with unwavering certainty. Clarissa's journal, with its meticulous charting of my symptoms, reaction, and dose method, sealed their fate. It wasn't just circumstantial. It was a cold, detailed confession. The legal system, for once, saw past the polished facade of the Hayes family's wealth. Clarissa Hayes received 25 years for aggravated assault, administering a controlled substance, and conspiracy to commit murder. Arthur Hayes, for his direct knowledge of the trust fund's terms, his complicity in failing to report the crime, and his attempt to manipulate the court via the mental incompetence claim, was sentenced to 20 years. 20 years felt strangely small compared to the 3 years of hell they put me through, but it was justice. It was closure. The final act of severing the cord happened a month later at the state penitentiary. I went to see Arthur, not for his sake, but for mine. He looked years older, his bespoke suit replaced by an orange jumpsuit. He tried to apologize, offering the same tired excuses. I let things get out of hand. Son, Clarissa was pressuring me. "Stop, Arthur," I said, my voice steady, devoid of anger or sorrow. "I came here for one reason. My grandparents left me that $5 million to protect me, to secure my independence. You tried to turn it into my execution fee. That's the difference between their love and your greed." I stood up and left. I didn't look back. Walking out of that cold, gray facility and breathing the free, open air felt like shedding a skin I had been trapped in for 15 years. My 25th birthday arrived quietly. There was no grand celebration, just a simple dinner with Mr. Davenport. The following day, the $5 million trust fund was officially transferred to my name. I never touched the principal for frivolous things. That money wasn't a reward. It was a responsibility. And more importantly, a legacy of my grandparents' love. The first person I took care of was the man who saved my life. I called Mitch Wallace. He came to my temporary apartment, expecting a quick wiring job. "Mitch," I said, handing him an envelope containing a substantial check. "This isn't an invoice. This is because you stood up for a kid you didn't know against the richest, most prestigious people in the county. You looked at the evidence, not the address. You told the truth when I needed it most." Mitch opened the envelope, and his eyes widened at the sight of the zeros. It was a life-changing amount, enough to secure his business for decades, upgrade his entire fleet, and guarantee his grandkids' college tuition. He didn't cry, but he gripped my hand with a crushing gratitude. "God bless you, Ronan. You're a good man." Kindness, I realized, is the only currency that truly matters, and I made sure Mitch was paid in full. Next, I used a portion of the fund to realize a much deeper purpose. I founded the Ronan Hayes Center for Cognitive Wellness and Trauma Recovery. The center was established to provide free psychological, legal, and cognitive assistance to young adults who had been victims of prolonged psychological abuse, gaslighting, or attempts to manufacture their mental incompetence within toxic family environments. It was my way of weaponizing the money against the very crime that created it. Every time a student received counseling or a legal consultation from the center, I was fulfilling the true promise of my grandparents' legacy. I may not have become the doctor I once aspired to be, but by using the truth and the money to fight back against the insidious lie of mental instability, I became something far more meaningful. A survivor who built a powerful, lasting shield for others. I beat the odds, not just by surviving the poisoning, but by refusing to let the hatred and the greed infect my own soul. I hope my story resonates with you. Perhaps your battle isn't with a neurotoxin in your air vents, but with a toxic boss, a cruel family member, or a debt that seems impossible to escape. The lesson is the same. The truth sets you free. Your greatest power is your choice to use your survival not for revenge, but to build a new life based on genuine value. If you felt that shock, that rage, or that eventual peace during this story, please show me. Hit the like button. It tells the platform this story matters and helps other survivors find it. Drop a comment and tell me what was the moment you realized you had to walk away from a toxic situation. Your story helps someone else. And if you want to join a community that believes in fighting back, believing in self-worth, and turning pain into power, you need to subscribe to this channel right now. By subscribing, you're not just following me. You're investing in the mission to prove that no matter how sophisticated the poison, the truth will always bring the light. Thank you for listening. Be strong. Be vigilant.